From the birthplace of radio's greatest era, live from New York, it's Radio Night Live with Kevin McCullough.
Wait, who?
Kevin McCullough, let me start with you.
Huh?
The big dog, Kevin McCullough.
And Kevin McCullough.
No, who?
Nationally syndicated radio host and author of No He Can't.
Who? Kevin McCullough?
Kevin McCullough is a nationally syndicated radio host and author of No He Can't.
What?
Barack Obama's Dismantling Hope and Change and CEO of Extreme Media.
Oh.
All right, Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us. Welcome to Saturday night, or as we call it around these parts, Radio Night Live. We are still, because of the kind of insane governance of one Mario, he's rolling in his grave, Andrew Cuomo, Mario's son, the governor of New York. We are still observing some voluntary quarantines with the staff. So we've had to go back to virtual production of the show. So if you're on the TV side, it may look slightly different than if we were live. There's reasons for that, but I don't want you to go anywhere because we have a TV exclusive that if you're just listening on radio, you might miss some of the significance of coming up at the end of the second hour. We've got an exclusive special musical guest to end the show with that I can't reveal the uniqueness of how special that is. But you may want to, for the final segment of the second hour, jump onto the live stream on my Twitter feed or Periscope or the Biz TV online feed. They have an online feed. You might want to check out our YouTube feed. Turn on the Biz TV station in your local area for the final segment of Hour 2. If you want to see the video side of it, I'm just gonna tease it. That's all I'm gonna say. Now, before that, we've got an enormous show coming up in the second hour. We have the Ladies Lounge to beat all ladies' lounges. We've got Bethany Mandel of the Washington Examiner. She's going to talk about the fear that parents are having in going back to school this fall with their kids. And friends, that stuff is real. The bride and I sat on a 3-hour Board of Education Zoom meeting for our district this week. And it's the kind of thing where you just don't know what to expect going into it. We had some better news than we expected we're actually going to get all of our schools open, at least for part of the week, for the first 6 weeks, and then they're going to try to increase it after that going forward. But it was better than what we had anticipated. But that is happening all over the country. And Bethany Mandel, writing for the Washington Examiner this week, has some pertinent observations about that. Before that, another young mom, an African-American mom of a little boy named Legend. That's right, an African-American mom of a little African-American boy named Legend, who was killed by other black youths in Kansas City, was the guest of the president this week as he launched something called Operation Legend. How important was that? Kelsey Bolar from the Independent Women's Forum is going to join us in the Ladies Lounge. Before that, Kristin B. Tate, columnist for The Hill, is going to take on Joe Biden. He has this crazy idea that we should teach the Islamic faith in our schools. He said it himself. We have the audio. You'll hear it with your own ears. And then prior to that, Carol Markowicz with one of my favorite annual things that we do every year. She's, of course, the writer for the New York Post, but she celebrates something called an Americaversary. You need to hear in her own words what it means to her. So that's all coming up in hour number 2. I hope you'll stay with us. Now, in this hour, the chaos, the utter criminal chaos that's going on in our biggest cities, Portland, Chicago, New York, Albuquerque, Kansas City, places where crime has been out of control. And by the way, the 25 most dangerous cities in the country, all run by Democrats. The president is starting to flex a little. This Operation Legend is designed to do part of that. He's going to step up to the plate. He's going to provide some resources to cities that need them. Some cities are taking them, and some are fighting him on it. He's also going to protect the federal properties. So the Portland situation is just diminishing by the moment. That mayor is a ridiculously stupid man. The people, the taxpayers of Portland deserve better than what they're getting. And they're not going to, and President Trump's not going to let them burn the federal courthouse down. He's going to hold people accountable. So that's all going on. But Bernie Kerik, the NYPD commissioner who was on duty the day that the Twin Towers were felled by terrorists, he will weigh in on this because he's in his 30 years in police life in the New York City area, he's seen some of this. And I'll ask him, is it worse than the worst that he ever saw before? We'll ask him that. He's coming up later this hour. And then to get started, next segment, John Solomon, who was one of the founders of The Hill and has now founded Just the News. I know it's a novel concept, a newsman telling just the news. But he is here with a brand new book that has 150 individual national security scoops. It's called Fallout, and it tracks the Bidens and the Clintons in a lot of the corruption that they double dealt with our country. And friend, if you don't read any other book before the election, I think you owe it to yourself to read this. But John Solomon, the journalistic stud, is with us tonight. So that's all straight ahead. Hey, I got some good news for you. Do you remember the young man, Nick Sandman? He was the guy that stood there from Covington Catholic High School waiting for his bus at the edge of the Supreme Court property when this actor who played an Indian activist came up and was chanting at him in his face. And Nick stood there and just minded his own business, smiled, was nothing but polite. When his classmates tried to make trouble, he told them, no, don't do that. Just be kind. Well, he has won. He has gotten the Washington Post and CNN both now to settle with him out of court. The lawsuits were launched for $270 and $220 million respectively each. But these two news outlets savaged this young man, claiming things that weren't even close to true. And he's got 2 of those 6 lawsuits. He's suing everybody. Everybody that came after him, he has filed a lawsuit for. And I expect more dollars to flow his way very, very soon. Another big win this week. And this for those of you parents who are concerned about the schools and going back. There's been if you run in elite circles at all, if you're around any kind of wine and cheese crowds, there's this kind of superiority complex that they respond to when you talk about school and the coronavirus. And I saw a lot of this on that Board of Education meeting that I was telling you about. They're just the worst, and they're not even all that educated. We had one guy get on the Board of Education call that we were attending virtually. And the guy said, well, we know that 7% of all the infections in America are children. And according to the infection to death rate, that means at least 1% of them have died, which means we've already lost 140 children in America so far. Now, he says all this with straight face. Nobody on the Board of Education corrects him. I keep waiting for other people to line up at the virtual microphone, which is a phone number, and to correct him. No one did, so I called in. And I said, hold on a second. There's not 140 dead children from COVID in America. Not one child has died, according to the CDC. Not one. As COVID being the primary cause or even a contributing cause to their death. Not one. That was as of last weekend. There haven't been any reported this weekend. So, so it's with that as the context that when I discovered the next morning after that call that the CDC is now falling in line with the same recommendations made by the American Academy of Pediatrics, which, the American Academy of its pediatric doctors and the CDC are both saying what 83% of the people in our village said. And I was so pleased to see that number because there was great fear among some of the moms that maybe the hysterical Karens were going to carry the day. But everybody is saying what's best for the kids is to get them back to school, get them back into their routine. And if you've got special ed kids that have IEPs or, any of those other kind of tangibly important things that where that contact and that extra oomph is given, it's crucial. But now you can also say, well, the CDC also says so, along with the American Academy of Pediatrics. So some good news. We're going to get some kids going back to school this fall. And I don't see that having anything but a very positive effect on the children that remote learning did not do much for. And I'm sorry, those of you in California tonight, I got word this week, you're all remote learning all next year. I don't think that's fair, and I think you should fight it, California. I think you should march on Gavin Newsom's mansion as the governor, the same way that protesters are trying to burn the courthouse down in Portland. You actually have cause to go protest him. Go protest him, but kill him with kindness and say, get my kids back to school. I'm Kevin McCullough, coming right back. A huge show. John Solomon joins me first. It's Radio Night Live. Hi, it's Kevin McCullough, and we are reaching a very important point in the COVID-19 crisis that most people in America don't know anything about. See, the COVID crisis in America has played out along one set of talking points. We must find a cure. We've got to have a vaccine. We need new therapies. We've got to make sure that reopenings begin, which is good. That's what America needs. That's how we will get our life back on track. And it's important for that to happen because of how the COVID crisis has actually interrupted the life of the third world. Well, wait a second, Kevin. What do you mean by that? Well, it's this simple. When the first world, Europe and America and the developed countries on planet Earth, began to experience the COVID crisis, the poverty that was already engulfing third world countries took a deeper and darker hold on all of them. That is nowhere more pronounced than in the Sudan region of Africa. In the northern Sudanese country, those who have been enslaved by northern Sudanese had their conditions become worse. Slave owners couldn't get as much food, so the little bit that they were already feeding to their slaves got taken away. They also got harsher crackdown on not getting work done and more brutal circumstances like genital mutilation and starvation. Sometimes poking out slaves' eyes who choose to disobey sometimes basic and abusive orders. Friends, these things have been occurring and they continue to occur. But Christian Solidarity International, somebody that we have advocated for the last dozen years or so at Kevin McCullough, all things related to this broadcast, Radio Night Live, the Kevin McCullough Show, and all of our podcasts, one of the things we have been advocating for is the liberation of those slaves so that they're not even in the ownership of those slave masters any longer. See, they came to be slaves while the Sudanese Civil War was underway. And when government powers brokered the peace and South Sudan was created as the world's youngest nation, it didn't address, none of the global powers addressed the continuing slave scenario there. Friends, we can make a difference, as we have in years past, by choosing to liberate slave by slave on an individual Underground Railroad negotiated basis, not trading dollars for lives, but trading something that is of value to the slave master, a vaccine for his cattle called Novidium. It will help his cattle survive through the harsh summer and weather extremes, and in exchange, they'll release a slave. CSI has been involved in this negotiation for dozens of years and have helped freed tens of thousands. Over 100,000 slaves have now been freed. The vaccine cost about $50. And then in addition to that, CSI would like to offer every slave that is liberated what's called a bag of hope. It includes a tarp that can be turned into a tent. It includes a year's worth of sorghum seed to grow a coming crop. It includes a year's worth of sorghum grain to be able to feed themselves for the first year when they win their liberty. Friends, you can make a life for a slave know that freedom by just giving that gift of $250. They also get a she-goat to help produce some income for the family and gardening tools to help them on their way. It is a wonderful, wonderful way to help someone who has been ravaged by the COVID-19 crisis. Would you help free a slave right now? 888-342-1010 is the number. 888-342-1010. 888-342-1010. We need your help right now. 888-342-1010. That's 888-342-1010. You can also go to csi-usa.org and click on Kevin McCullough's picture.
the job of policing a neighborhood falls on the shoulders of local elected leadership. Never forget that. When they abdicate their duty, the results are catastrophic.
That's what the president was saying yesterday and continues to hold true to today as he has announced the launching of Operation Legend. We're going to get into that on a couple of different levels before this show is done today, and I hope you'll stick around. What a huge show we've got for you. Coming up, Kelsey Bolar from the Independent Women's Forum, and she will weigh in on the mom of Legend, the young boy this operation is named after, and why it's so important that Black Americans understand that the president is far from what Joe Biden called him today, the only racist president in American history. He does remember that some of our presidents owned slaves, right? He does know that? I'm just curious. Anyway, we'll get into that. Bethany Mandel from the Washington Examiner is going to stop by. There is a major panic amongst parents about what school is going to bring this fall. She's going to break that down for us, and we haven't had Bethany on in a while. Looking forward to having her back. But first, with kind of an exclusive scoop, as he is often one to bring them to his own website called Just the News. Imagine that concept nowadays. Someone that just reports what the news is and doesn't try to take a specific angle or narrative to it before he publishes it. J. Solomon Reports, if you're following him on Twitter, and of course one of the founding men and brains behind that publication called The Hill, and he rejoins us. John, welcome. Glad you're with us on this Thursday.
I'm glad to join you, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
And congrats on the publication of your brand new book. It's called Fallout: Nuclear Bribes, Russian Spies, and the Washington Lies That Enriched the Clinton and Biden Dynasties. John, let me start with something from this week's headlines. The Ukraine named Joe Biden as an official criminal suspect in the bribery issue that seems to have gotten an official out of their job in exchange for U.S. aid. We saw him brag about that. What can the Ukrainians do to him?
Well, it'll be interesting to see. What they have to do is do an investigation and determine if there was anything inappropriate about Joe Biden's 2016 threat to then Ukrainian President Poroshenko, saying, if you don't fire this prosecutor, the Attorney General of Ukraine, essentially, you're not getting $1 billion of U.S. aid. And at that very moment he uttered those words, it is not in factual dispute. That prosecutor was overseeing a active, ongoing investigation of Hunter Biden and Hunter Biden's employee, Burisma Holdings, which was a natural gas company in Ukraine. The allegation that the former prosecutor who was fired has asked to be investigated was that Joe Biden's activities were an unlawful interference in an ongoing investigation in which he had a personal familial interest. So what the fired prosecutor has asked is to investigate that Joe Biden illegally got him fired because it's to stop an investigation of his son. So that's the focal point. Ukrainian law enforcement doesn't quite work the way we do. So it'll be interesting to see if anything comes of it. But that is indeed a true story and something that's out there.
Yeah. Well, and I'm guessing that when your book is subtitled Nuclear Bribes, Russian Spies, and the Washington Lies, that's a mouthful, by the way, that enriched
try saying that 3 times.
Clinton and Biden dynasties. You're talking about corruption that has gone on for quite a while. You're talking about decades here in this book.
Yeah, absolutely. What this the book has like 150 little mini scoops in it, but it tells one large story of how the Obama, Biden, Clinton team tried to reboot relations with Russia. It failed miserably. We gave Vladimir Putin tens of billions of dollars of nuclear fuel contracts with American utilities. We gave him a uranium one, the 20% of uranium assets underneath the United States soil. And we helped them build an alternative Silicon Valley called Skokovo, which now today the U.S. Intelligence Committee tells us is a outpost for military espionage against the United States. It was weaponized against us. And as soon as Obama, Biden, and Clinton gave that up to the Russians, Vladimir Putin pulled the rug out from underneath us, invaded Ukraine, and we went to chilly relations. So it was a horrible foreign policy failure. Some people I interviewed said it may have been the worst foreign policy failure in 50 years. But at the same time it was going on, before it failed, lots of Democratic figures were getting in and cashing in on the game. Joe Biden's energy advisor was a paid consultant for the Ukrainian nuclear company, advising them how they could get into the U.S. market and make money and maybe put the American uranium business out of business. Bill Clinton gets a $500,000 check. The Clinton Foundation gets millions of dollars from people interested in the Russia reset. John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's eventual campaign chairman, his clean energy company where he sits on the board, suddenly gets a Russian investment. Keep in mind, Russians don't really care about clean energy. They're an oil and gas economy, so that looks a little suspicious. Lots of people. And then, of course, when it fails, Joe Biden goes to Ukraine and tries to help Ukraine build a natural gas infrastructure so they don't have to buy Russian gas in the future. And who's in the vapor trail of that decision? Well, it's Hunter Biden getting $3 million from Ukrainians' largest gas company. And so he's cashing in his dad's foreign policy. So that's the corruption. That's the failed policy that Hillary Clinton was trying to hide when she hired Christopher Steele, Fusion GPS, to do the Oppo research and try to create a Russian narrative, a false Russian narrative, that somehow Donald Trump and the Republicans had a Russia problem.
Well, it's just so stunning, and you work through that so fast, John. I feel like there's 1,000 questions that need to be asked about each little sentence that you had. But for those that are that this is brand new to, talk to us about why some of this stuff is so deeply wrong. Does it cross legal violations in certain areas? Is it just bad practices in others? What's the crime here?
Well, listen, one of the things that all federal officials are required to do is not only to avoid an actual appearance of conflict of interest. I'm sorry, not to avoid an actual conflict of interest, but also to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Right.
And we just went through the impeachment trial where Joe Biden's own State Department officials, the people that worked under Joe Biden on the Ukraine policy, said, we believe Joe Biden and Hunter Biden created the appearance of a conflict of interest in dealing with the Ukrainians and cashing in at the same time. Similarly, Hillary Clinton going into Russia, doing the reboot at the same time her husband's collecting $500,000 speaking fees and collecting millions of dollars for the Clinton Foundation, created the appearance of a conflict of interest. The problem is those laws just simply don't get enforced anymore. It's almost become accepted that everybody's going to have their hand in the cookie jar. And it's that swamp that American voters were so angry about that they elected Donald Trump to drain.
Yeah.
And so we'll see over the next few years whether the Trump administration had similar problems or whether we had an interruption in that swamp behavior. But the 2009 to 2019 decade is chock full of examples of government officials going through revolving doors, working for the Russians and going for the government and going back to the Russians, cashing in on familial connections and reputations. It's exactly why Americans are so disgusted with Washington.
Well, it certainly seems that it has become the way of life, particularly for that class of Democratic establishment. You said there's 150 little mini scoops in this book. Give us something that nobody knows. Tell me something that I've never seen reported anywhere before.
Yeah, this is something that's, I think, really important because, remember, there's a famous soundbite from Hillary Clinton in 2017 where she says it's just criminal. It's awful that Donald Trump was in bed with Russia and that the Russians were targeting him and he's trying to cover it up. Well, it turns out none of that was true, right? He was never colluding with the Russians, according to Robert Mueller. There was no effort to cover it up. The investigation went on unimpeded. But back in 2010, 2011, we now know, because of some declassified documents I got from the FBI, that Hillary Clinton was the abject target of a deep Russian spying effort. It targeted her. There were 10 illegal spies. They're called illegals. If anyone who watched the TV show The Americans, you know what that's about.
Yep. John, hold that thought. Coming right back with John Solomon. The book is called Fallout. It's Radio Night Live.
Brand new from beloved author Ivan Quinones comes a new children's book, Magnificent Ian and the Secret Lab, available now in paperback or Kindle from the Amazon Marketplace. One satisfied parent said, "The story is quite intriguing. The way it develops leaves you waiting for the next adventure. Magnificent Ian is such a fun book. I would highly recommend it for children grades 2 through 5. Another said, "I barely got the book out of the package and my son immediately grabbed it and ran off to read it." In Magnificent Ian and the Secret Lab, Ian finds a secret lab in the middle of an active volcanic island, run by a crazy scientist who tasks him with widening a secret tunnel. There's suspense, action, adventure, and a lesson about integrity. Available now on the Amazon Marketplace and the Amazon Kindle store. Magnificent Ian and the Secret Lab from author Ivan Quinones in paperback and Kindle form. Get your copy today. Magnificent Ian and the Secret Lab.
Balance of Nature.
I haven't heard any negative feedback from any of my patients who've been taking the product. I look at Balance of Nature and I look what it's doing for me as I've started taking it, and for the patients that I have that are taking it, it's been phenomenal.
In my practice, I was getting to the point where I couldn't have the strength to see that many patients anymore, and I was
McCullough, have I told you what a great night's sleep you can sleeping on a MyPillow? I don't have interrupted sleep. I don't have to fold my pillows in half and stack them up on top of each other and do all kinds of weird stuff. Why? Because MyPillow will conform to the shape that I want it to, and it'll stay cool all night and keep that shape and come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. Is your pillow warranted for 10 years? I didn't think so. Well, right now, if you call MyPillow and you use my promo code, you're going to get the best offer that's ever been granted on radio or television. $69.98. That's $34.99 per pillow. That's all it costs. $69.98, 2 premiums, $34.99 each. Never seen this offer before. He called the show just to tell us what it was. Here's the phone number, 800-506-2641, promo code KMC. Again, 800-506-2641, promo code KMC, or online at mypillow.com.
Balance of Nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
I'm very, very athletic. I play ice hockey 2 or 3 days a week. I'm in good shape for my age. I keep up with the young kids, but, I get tired. Muscles get sore. I'm achy. So I noticed just by taking this product for a month, I'm not as tired as I used to be or fatigued. Muscles feel good. I feel like my stamina is better than it was. I just feel better than I did, and I wasn't really complaining before.
Don't wait to see what getting over 10 servings of whole fruits and vegetables every day can do for you. Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order of fruits and veggies. Start your journey to better health today by calling 1-800-2468-751 or by going to balanceofnature.com, and make sure to receive this special radio offer by using discount code KMC.
Radio Night live from New York City. I still hold that it's the greatest city on planet Earth, but it has gone downhill dramatically. Bernie Kerik will address the nation's violence with our cities coming up yet this hour. But we're talking with John Solomon. The book is Fallout. And John, during the break, you were reminding me, you think that maybe the biggest crime of all was the Obama failed Russian reboot with Russia. But why?
We weakened our national security and our posture to Vladimir Putin in the name of a peace pursuit that did not pan out. It was a major loss of national security, a major loss of foreign policy failure. And a lot of people don't realize or appreciate how damaging that Russian reboot was to the U.S.-Russia dynamic.
You come towards the end of the book in Chapter 10, and you talk about what things all mean for the future. What are the takeaways from all of the... And friends, you got to get this book, Fallout, by John Solomon. What are the takeaways, and how long will it take us to recover? Can we? Can we fix things that got exposed at this time? What's the big takeaway?
It's I think we have kind of reversed course from a period of 8 years of what I would call foreign policy appeasement. That's sort of the approach that the Obama-Biden-Clinton team did, which is, we'll try to make friends with our enemies and see what happens. Some will argue the Iran deal was good. Some will argue it's bad. The Russian effort failed miserably. The China effort failed miserably. And so Trump has sort of gone back, when you look at President Trump, he's sort of gone back to the Ronald Reagan approach, which is basically peace through strength, which is we're going to be strong and we're going to hold our enemies and we're going to sanction them. We're going to pressure them. If you look at what actions the president has taken against China, and just in the last few weeks, devastating blows against China, he's put far tougher sanctions on Russia than Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, or Joe Biden.
You never know that watching the media, though. They think that he's butting up with them.
That's right. That's the amazing thing. And almost everything, but that's exactly the final point of the chapter. Chapter 10 is designed to talk about the decade of deceit, which is that institutions we came to assume and believe would remain above politics and remain above false information. The FBI, the State Department, the Justice Department, the intelligence community, the news media, all during the decade of 2009 to 19 fell prey to politics and deceitful information. When the FBI changes a document to hide an embarrassing fact, they've committed a crime, but they've also deceived the American public. When the news media, like the New York Times, which was exposed last week, the main story that the New York Times wrote on Russia collusion in February 2017, the FBI concluded immediately all nine major facts in that story were wrong. The New York Times, front page.
Wow.
So these institutions that were truthful with us, were above politics, have now been dragged into politics and into deceit. And I argue with Seamus in the final chapter, that may be the greatest threat, the greatest outcome, the greatest fallout of the last decade, which is institutions that were key to democracy, to safety, to security, to honesty, have been corrupted by politics and deceitfulness. And we're in a new era of information warfare where tactics we use to destabilize our enemy through warfare, they're now being used against the American people to create false realities. That's very dangerous.
John, I've already kept you too long. Just one last question. You started The Hill. You care passionately about good journalism. You've seen what has happened to the New York Times, and you've implied the media's culpability in what you've talked about today. I'm just curious, as you relaunched, another entity called Just the News. Where do you measure the level of honesty and necessity that the media is giving the American people today, and what's your outlook on your industry?
Well, I think the greatest barometer of the trust and the bond of trust that the American media has with the news media today comes in the recent Pew poll that showed, I think, the favorability rating of American national news media is like below 20%. That's devastating. I mean, any politician that had a below 20% favorability rating would be resigning from office.
Mm-hmm.
I think that should be a wake-up call to all my colleagues. You know, history's had moments. We had the yellow journalism era of the early 1900s, and then we got better. We learned from it. We got better. We had the Janet Cook failure. We've had major failures in other stories in the past. I think we are in an awakening moment where the industry has to look at itself and say, we've had some serious thing wrongs. We got to stop doubling down. We've lost our neutral voice. And I think the natural gravity of the American marketplace and of democracy is going to create an introspection moment, perhaps right after this election, where the media will look back and say, we've lost too much. We got to reevaluate where we are. And that's why we created Just the News, to try to just get the ball started. Neutral voice, transparent reporting. Anyone that reads our stories can also read all our documents, video and audio. We put them in a tab called Dig In, because we don't want to indoctrinate you or be arrogant enough to say you should just trust us because we're Just the News. We give you our materials. In this book, there are 120 pages of endnotes. Every sentence is attributed back to the source document, so readers can see that themselves. We transparency and neutrality are the ultimate panacea as to what the news media has done to itself.
Well, that's well said. John Solomon, always appreciate your very intense and thorough work. Thank you for this.
Thanks.
Congrats on Fallout, and let's just hope that a lot of people read it and we wake up to where we're at today. John Solomon, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kevin.
More Radio Night Live straight ahead, plus a big ladies' lounge next hour. Stay with us. Hi, it's Kevin McCullough, and we are reaching a very important point in the COVID-19 crisis that most people in America don't know anything about. See, the COVID crisis in America has played out along one set of talking points. We must find a cure. We've got to have a vaccine. We need new therapies. We've got to make sure that reopenings begin, which is good. That's what America needs. That's how we will get our life back on track. And it's important for that to happen because of how the COVID crisis has actually interrupted the life of the third world. Well, wait a second, Kevin. What do you mean by that? Well, it's this simple. When the first world, Europe and America and the developed countries on planet Earth, began to experience the COVID crisis, the poverty that was already engulfing third world countries took a deeper and darker hold on all of them. That is nowhere more pronounced than in the Sudan region of Africa. In the northern Sudanese country, those who have been enslaved by northern Sudanese had their conditions become worse. Slave owners couldn't get as much food, so the little bit that they were already feeding to their slaves got taken away. They also got harsher crackdown on not getting work done and more brutal circumstances like genital mutilation and starvation, sometimes poking out slaves' eyes who choose to disobey sometimes basic and abusive orders. Friends, these things have been occurring and they continue to occur. But Christian Solidarity International, somebody that we have advocated for the last dozen years or so at Kevin McCullough, all things related to this broadcast, Radio Night Live, The Kevin McCullough Show, and all of our podcasts, one of the things we have been advocating for is the liberation of those slaves so that they're not even in the ownership of those slave masters any longer. See, they came to be slaves while the Sudanese Civil War was underway. And when government powers brokered the peace and South Sudan was created as the world's youngest nation, it didn't address, none of the global powers addressed the continuing slave scenario there. Friends, we can make a difference, as we have in years past, by choosing to liberate slave by slave on an individual underground railroad negotiated basis, not trading dollars for lives, but trading something that is of value to the slave master, a vaccine for his cattle called Novidium. It will help his cattle survive through the harsh summer and weather extremes, and in exchange, they'll release a slave. CSI has been involved in this negotiation for dozens of years and have helped freed tens of thousands. Over 100,000 slaves have now been freed. The vaccine cost about $50. And then in addition to that, CSI would like to offer every slave that is liberated what's called a bag of hope. It includes a tarp that can be turned into a tent. It includes a year's worth of sorghum seed to grow a coming crop. It includes a year's worth of sorghum grain to be able to feed themselves for the first year when they win their liberty. Friends, you can make a life for a slave know that freedom by just giving that gift of $250. They also get a she-goat to help produce some income for the family and gardening tools to help them on their way. It is a wonderful, wonderful way to help someone who has been ravaged by the COVID-19 crisis. Would you help free a slave right now? 888-342-1010 is the number. 888-342-1010. 888-342-1010. We need your help right now. 888-342-1010. That's 888-342-1010. You can also go to csi-usa.org and click on Kevin McCullough's picture. You're listening to Radio Night Live. We've got a big special ending segment for you tonight at the end of Hour 2. A special musical guest. We don't often have special musical guests, but we do tonight, and I hope you'll stick around for that. Plus, a packed ladies' lounge. Listen to this. Karol Markowicz, Kristin Tate, Kelsey, Bolar, Bethany, Mandel, all on the same night. How can you get that much female brilliance into one studio all at the same time? This is an amazing thing tonight. It's one of the biggest shows we've ever done. Thanks to John Solomon for all he's doing. Friends, everywhere you look, every which way you turn, you see violence. Portland, Chicago, New York, it's all over the place. And someone who's concerned about that is the great NYPD Commissioner, Bernie Kerik. Bernie Kerik, welcome back to Radio Night Live. Has it been this bad in your collective memory since you left active police duty?
No, it hasn't been like this since Giuliani came into office in 1994. We were at the height of the crime epidemic, at the crack epidemic, if you will, back then. New York City had 2,200 murders a year. But over the 8 years Giuliani was in office, that dropped by about 70%. The murder rate, violent crime dropped about 65%. And it continually went downhill from there until Mayor de Blasio came into office. And especially in the last year, we've started to see spikes in violent crime, in shootings, in murders in New York, and basically outright lawlessness. And as I was listening to your opening for this segment, the one thing that I I kept hearing over and over are, in certain cities, this is happening where mayors are not enforcing the law. There's lawlessness, there's violence, there's shootings, there's murders. The one thing you did not say is that every one of those cities are run by a Democrat. And that is a reality. So, I urge your listeners to take a broad look at this, a good look. Look at the cities that have consistently seen the slaughter of young black men and women in them for the last few decades, and they're all run by Democrats. The Democratic Party is, they support this ideology to let things go as they are, and as a result, it has really, and I hate to sort of talk about what the Russians are saying. There are cities in this country now that look like a war zone, Chicago being one of them.
Yeah.
So somebody's going to have to do something. And if the Democratic Party is not going to do it, then the president has no choice. And I will tell you, it's pretty disturbing. It's pretty annoying, upsetting, frustrating to hear governors. I watched a thing this morning. Tom Ridge, the former governor of Pennsylvania, said, it would be a cold day in hell before he would let the feds come into his state. Well, I got news for Tom Ridge and any other governor or mayor that thinks that the federal government cannot come into their cities and enforce federal law. They're insane. That's nuts. First of all, the federal courthouses can be protected by the federal government. 2, guns, gangs, drugs. There are federal laws on the books that the feds can come in and enforce those laws and start locking people up. And I have to tell you, in areas like Chicago, if I was the mayor, okay, I get you don't like Donald Trump. You're a Democrat. You despise the guy, whatever the case may be. But you know what? President Trump has the ability to order 150 to 200 DEA and ATF agents and FBI agents into Chicago to assist the Chicago PD.
Yeah.
You know what happens when they do that? They come in, they enforce federal law. The U.S. attorneys charges these suspects, these thugs, these people that are responsible for the violent crime and shootings. They charge them federally. No more turnstile justice. You won't see these guys on the street tomorrow. They're going to jail. They're going to stay in jail until their trial or when they plead guilty. And then they're going away for mandatory minimums, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. That's what's going to happen. And the federal government and Donald Trump has the authority, the ability, the legal authority to do that. And it should be done.
Well, and here's the thing, and this is what I don't comprehend at all, and it makes me realize that these Democrat mayors really aren't all that smart. They think that by cooperating with Trump, that they're going to look like turncoat to the cause, and maybe they will be for the far left in the country. But here's the thing. Your job as the mayor is to provide for the safety of your residents, and that's likely going to lead to a better political outcome for you. You're going to have a greater chance of being reelected if you provide a safe city for your people to live in than you do if you watch it be destroyed at every turn because you didn't have the backbone to stand up. So whether you can't bring yourself to send in your own police force, at least accepting the help of the federal government helps you win. And that's what, I mean, Bernie, it is beyond disgusting to see the willingness that the left is willing to play with the safety of people's lives. We're talking about Black Lives Matter all the time. Who's predominantly dying? Who are 14 or 15 of those victims outside that funeral home last night on the south side of Chicago?
They were all black.
It wasn't white
they
people.
They were all black.
Right. And you don't hear word one from anybody about this stuff that is championing the Black Lives Matter mantra. So what we got to do, friends, we have to put on our thinking caps here, and we have to say what is good for the most number of people, for the most number of innocent people, and then we have to pursue that.
Right. You know what, Kev? Here's the bottom line. I would rather, if I was a Democratic mayor running one of these cities, I'd give it a shot to say, you know what? I don't like the president. I don't agree with his policies, but we need help. I've asked the president to come in, send us the federal investigators and agents. And then I'd promote that later. We reduced violent crime. We reduced murder. I did that because I made that request. I'd much rather do that than stand up there and say, yeah, I'll never deal with the president. And oh, by the way, we have the highest violent crime, the highest shootings, and the highest murder rate in the United States. But I'm not dealing with the president. It's complete lunacy.
This is what you get when you put Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders in charge of your domestic policy agenda. And that's what the Democratic Party, in large measure now, headed by Joe Biden, is doing. And none of it makes sense. And if you know what my good friend John Katsimatidis always says is if we just have people of good common sense come together, we can solve these problems. It's when you have these principled ideologues that are saying we won't budge on this that people end up dying in the street. Bernie Kerik, we appreciate your service not only to the great city of New York, but to your country and to keeping your eye finally attuned on what's going on. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Kevin.
Kevin McCullough, when we come back, an important update. Don't go away. Kevin McCullough, have I told you what a great night's sleep you can get by sleeping on a MyPillow? It's really true. It's changed my life for a number of years now. And ever since I've been sleeping on a MyPillow, I don't have interrupted sleep. I don't have to fold my pillows in half and stack them up on top of each other and do all kinds of weird stuff. Why? Because MyPillow will conform to the shape that I want it to. And it'll stay cool all night and keep that shape. And come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. Is your pillow warranted for 10 years? I didn't think so. Well, right now, if you call MyPillow and you use my promo code, you're going to get the best offer that's ever been granted on radio or television. $69.98. That's $34.99 per pillow. That's all it costs. $69.98. 2 premiums, $34.99 each. Never seen this offer before. He called the show just to tell us what it was. Here's the phone number, 800-506-2641, promo code KMC. Again, 800-506-2641, promo code KMC, or online at mypillow.com. Hi, Kevin McCullough. Shopping for an engagement ring can be very stressful. You want a unique ring at a great price. The big jewelry stores try to sell you what they have in stock. Others try to upsell you till it's way over your budget. Disappointment inevitably sets in, and you end up settling for a ring that you're not totally satisfied with. Friends, that's why I urge every one of you, my friends, my listeners, even my family, to visit Lord's Diamonds and see my very good friend Anu. You see, Anu is different. She takes great pride in working with her client's budget, finding the right diamond, and creating a unique engagement ring that the bride cherishes forever. There is no comparison. Honesty, integrity, good Christian values. This is what Anu and Lord's Diamonds are all about. It's the height of wedding and engagement season. Don't settle. Buy a ring everyone will admire, and if you mention Kevin McCullough, you're going to get an additional $500 off the price of wedding bands. To set up an appointment, call 212-789-8500. That's 212-789-8500, or online at Lord's Diamonds. Hi, Kevin McCullough. I've been telling you about it for the longest time. The market goes up, the market goes down, the economy kind of wiggles around. Yes, we're doing better. Yes, it's pretty good days that we're in. But did you know that if something took a turn for the worse, that right now it is legal in this country, right this very second, for the government to reach into your 401k, IRA, and bank accounts, saving accounts, checking accounts, etc., and take money out and leave it instead an IOU? That's called the bail-in. Get the facts by reading about the coming bail-in when you call and get a free copy of the Landmark Capital's exclusive white paper on the coming bail-in. See how all this was set up to manage the out-of-control national debt? Learn how to protect your future and your hard-earned money by investing those funds into precious metals. So when the bail-in happens, they can't touch your precious metals, and you have peace of mind. Call Landmark today, 844-604-2575. All right, Kevin McCullough getting ready to close out hour number 1 on Radio Night Live tonight. Thank you for making us the choice of more weekend radio listeners than any radio broadcast in the country every weekend. I'm so grateful. Harker's Brothers Group, the research firm out of New York City, said that 94% of those that listen to Kevin McCullough want more Kevin McCullough. And that's one of the highest grades they've ever seen amongst contemporary talk show hosts of this era. And I couldn't be more honored than to have learned that. And I hope that you will spread the word that on Saturday nights we've got important information for you, and glad to provide it for you. And really thankful for great partners. There's radio stations from the New England area all the way to San Diego, from Washington State all the way to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and everywhere in between. For instance, in the great city of Atlantic City, New Jersey, the great WPG and the great Harry Hurley and everybody that's part of that station. I've been told by the program director there that we are responsible for the listenership of, I think it's 2 out of every 3 radios on a Saturday night that are tuned in. Man, that's just, I'm so honored and so humbled and so thankful that we've earned your trust. And I know that it's resonating, because when we do things together, when I ask you to join me in efforts, I have noticed that you have responded. And I need to brag on you for a second. Because in the midst of the pandemic and in the midst of the crises that we were facing with the economy and so forth, I did not know if, when my friends at Christian Solidarity International said, Kev, do you think we could, we've got 96 slave liberations going on, negotiations for the lives of 96 slaves. Do you think that we could get the Radio Night Live people to respond and to help us secure the bags of hope that we need to give those slaves once they are liberated? And, I was very worried about the economy, and I was very worried about the ability to do that, and I shouldn't have been, because you have blown me away week after week. Friends, we are now, after only a few weeks of telling you about this, we are only 8 liberated slaves away from having liberated all 96. So if there were 8 of you tonight that could pick up a phone and dial 888-342-1010, and either do a one-time gift of $250 or maybe a 10-month gift of $25 a month, or maybe there's someone tonight that could write a $2,000 check. That $2,000 check would liberate the final 8 slaves that have not been liberated in our spring effort with Christian Solidarity International. These are South Sudanese Christians whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. They're mostly women. They have been raped. They've been brutalized. We are bringing them home to South Sudan. We are giving them a brand new life. And friends, the 116 of you that have already participated in this effort, I just cannot say thank you enough to. But it's those final 8 that I'm really worried about. Could you write a $2,000 check tonight and say, yeah, we'll get those final 8 slaves done? Or maybe you could do 4 slaves at $1,000 or 2 at $500, or just help one lady receive her freedom for $250. 888-342-1010 is the number. 888-342-1010. And thanks to Marslin, Brian, Tom, Lee, Michael, Stephen, Dustin, Jerry, all for giving just in the last week. Kevin McCullough coming back, hour 2 next.
From the birthplace of radio's greatest era, live from New York, it's Radio Night Live with Kevin McCullough. Wait, who?
Kevin McCullough, let me start with you.
Huh?
The big dog, Kevin McCullough.
And Kevin McCullough.
No, who?
Nationally syndicated radio host and author of No He Can't.
Who? Kevin McCullough? Kevin McCullough is a nationally syndicated radio host and author of No He Can't. What? Barack Obama's dismantling hope and change and CEO of Extreme Media.
Oh. All right, Kevin McCullough welcoming you into hour number 2. It is, of course, the Ladies Lounge. And tonight, what a great lineup we've got for you in the Ladies Lounge. Bethany Mandel from the Washington Examiner will be with us to talk about the fear that all the moms have about schools opening in this fall. She's got some real cogent thoughts on that. Kelsey Bolar is here to talk about President Trump's Operation Legend. It's going to be how he's cleaning up the cities in America and how a young African-American mom from Kansas City inspired him for that. We'll talk about that. Kristin B. Tate here. Did you know Joe Biden wants to teach the Islamic faith in public schools? She'll tackle that question. And to kick off the Ladies Lounge tonight, not only am I pleased to have with us one of the original founding members of the original Ladies Lounge. Now, remember, this segment used to be on my nightly show when I worked the late night hours at AM 970 in New York. And Karol was with us from that very moment, and she's been part of it ever since. But every year, at this particular week, this particular time of the year, Karol celebrates a very special day. And she's going to tell us all about that. But first, I wanted you to hear the cogent words of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
It's just that now we've strayed so far away from what has really made us powerful. Where we are is not a good thing. And this idea of like 10% better from garbage shouldn't be what we settle for.
That's the curious ponderings of one Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And I find it offensive and appalling and stomach-turning that she basically says America is 10% away from garbage. But you know who doesn't feel that way? And this is one of my favorite weeks to talk to her out of the year, every single year, because she usually draws attention to it, is Carol Markowicz of the New York Post. She celebrates something called an Americaversary. And she's been doing it in her column and in her life every year pretty much since she came from the Soviet Union. And she's here to talk about all things related to that once again. But Karol, I want to say happy birthday. It's not your birthday. It's your Americaversary. But it was the 20th of July. You've been writing about it for a few years. We've celebrated a few of them here on the air with you.
Yeah.
But for people that don't know anything about it, why?
Well, my family came here. My mother and I came on July 20th, 1878, and it was just obviously a momentous time in our lives, and we feel lucky every single day to be American, and on July 20th, we make sure to stop and really celebrate it.
It's kind of like your own July 4th in your own family's life.
Exactly. July is a very patriotic month for my family.
Sounds like it. So let me ask you this. When you and your mom are reflecting upon where the city that you've lived in the rest of your life and how you've grown up and kind of the way America has gone back and forth since then, and you hear someone like AOC say what she said there in that soundbite, which isn't a particularly new one. She's been saying this kind of stuff for a while. What does that do to you? How are you impacted by that?
So I mentioned this in my column yesterday, but, in general, when somebody attacks America, I am immediately ready to defend. But when she said that, it comes from such a place of privilege and such a place of luck. She has no idea what she does not know. She believes that America is garbage, and she has just no concept of what other countries are like. It really is. She's so lucky, and she doesn't even know it. She's so privileged, and it's so obvious in the words that she says that she, grew up in this situation where she never had to wonder what actual garbage was like.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's lucky. When I heard that clip, when she originally said it, like my initial stance was to be defensive, but then I was like, she's a congresswoman. This bartender became a congresswoman, and she still thinks America sucks, and it's like. you know, how much, there's nothing you could do to get through to somebody like that. She's very privileged, and that's, you know, a position of privilege.
Well, in her own life, they moved so that she could attend better schools.
Right.
And she was able to go to higher education, and she was able to do a number of things, and she's lecturing us. But the problem that I have with it, Karol, is that she's talking to millennials, and there are a great swath of them that are just buying it hook, line, and sinker, and they don't know anything either. They've never been to places worse than here.
Right, absolutely. And, you know, so it's all of our responsibilities to raise our children to really understand. And I said this on Fox this morning, but it's hard to raise happy, confident, lucky American children and instill in them the feeling that they're privileged, and they're privileged to have been born American. And this is like one of the greatest lucky breaks that they can possibly have. Because they don't know, because they didn't grow up with a grandmother who told, you know, cried as she told me stories about her father being taken away to the gulag for the crime of owning a bakery. They don't know. And so it's very important to keep telling these stories and to keep reinforcing to our lucky American children that it could be so much worse in other places, and to feel blessed every day for what they have.
We're having a similar conversation, though slightly different, in our household right now, because my kids have been prone to complaining about quarantine and lockdown, and not for unwarranted reasons. It is. Yeah. But we've been we even discussed where my one son, who's adopted from Haiti, came from, and kind of what life has been like for him. And my kids weren't. They still were just not kind of getting it. So I made rice and beans for dinner the other night, and I put it in front of them, and I said, "This is what you would eat tonight if you were wealthy in Haiti." And that bowl of rice and beans opened up a whole conversation about another world that none of them have ever been to, but that I've been to a few times. And I think we need to do exactly what you're saying. We need to keep talking about all the things we have to be grateful for, because I think that does two things. It helps us, number one, discover that we are happier than we realize. And number two, it causes us to want to keep preserving this so that the next generation can have it as well.
Absolutely. And, you know, I heard from liberals in the last few days, you know, saying, I love America too. It's not just the people on the right. And I say, great, because I don't want loving America to be on one political side only.
Yeah.
But they're letting the left erase our history, and they're letting the left get rid of things, you know, push to get rid of the Star Spangled Banner or the Pledge of Allegiance or all these things that are patriotic and a part of us. They're letting this leftist insanity tear it all down. And they need to stand up for it.
And
they need to stand up to it.
And Biden is showing a complete willingness to turn over all policy to Bernie Sanders and AOC. And I think that should be, whether you like Trump or not, I think that this election is becoming about stuff that's so much bigger than him. It is complete anarchy and communist socialism versus a truly American way of life, and which one do we think is going to be our character for the years to come?
So, I mean, I think that if the liberals want to believe that they, you know, if they feel like they're part of the loving America, then they need to stand up to the left, and they need to put it down themselves.
Speaking of which, here locally, let me ask about Governor Cuomo, because yesterday he said that if he doesn't see more compliance with his executive orders that he's been issuing, that he's going to reverse the openings that he's had in New York State. And he does this, Karol, as we enter a 13th week of lower deaths nationwide and continued progress in the fight against coronavirus. But is there a little bit of this kind of dictatorial power surge that's going on in governors and mayors' heads too?
You know, Governor Cuomo has the media on his side, and it's just so absurd to watch them give him a pass on all of this. I think it's really gross that he's taking a media victory tour while continuing to threaten the people of his state with shutting down again. Yeah. I think it has to be, you know, one or the other. So, yeah, you know what I think, Kevin. I think he did a terrible job, and I think nobody's calling him on it, or very few people are calling him on it.
Well, and then you've got actually people praising him. What was with Fauci this week saying that New York was the model and how to, I mean, we killed 32,000 seniors.
Right. Anybody could be the model if you kill 32,000 people. Yeah, I've heard it compared. This is the best comparison I've heard, but it's like putting the fire out by letting the house burn down. That's what we did in New York, and nobody should follow us into that.
Yeah, I guess
Also,
eventually the
fact that-
flames will stop, but it is from a different cause.
Right, absolutely. And the fact that he's so proud of his work here. New York seeded the virus in so many places. The New York Times covered that. This isn't a fringe opinion. This was the front page of the New York Times with a map of how New York seeded the virus across the country. So failure from top to bottom.
Yeah, our fault. Well, the good thing is it is America, and as Karol celebrates every year, it is an important reality and idea. That's really what America is. It's an idea. It's not an ethnicity, and it's not a geography, really. It's more of an idea that she got to experience 20 years ago and has celebrated every year since, or beyond that. I don't know how long it's been, Karol. But anyway, happy Americaversary once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for being with us. Absolutely. Read her in the New York Post. Her column is must-read. One of the most important editorials you can read each week. Pretty simple. Radio Night Live continues with Kristin B. Tate next. Hi, it's Kevin McCullough, and we are reaching a very important point in the COVID-19 crisis that most people in America don't know anything about. See, the COVID crisis in America has played out along one set of talking points. We must find a cure. We've got to have a vaccine. We need new therapies. We've got to make sure that reopenings begin, which is good. That's what America needs. That's how we will get our life back on track. And it's important for that to happen because of how the COVID crisis has actually interrupted the life of the third world. Well, wait a second, Kevin. What do you mean by that? Well, it's this simple. When the first world, Europe and America and the developed countries on planet Earth, began to experience the COVID crisis, the poverty that was already engulfing third world countries took a deeper and darker hold on all of them. That is nowhere more pronounced than in the Sudan region of Africa. In the northern Sudanese country, those who have been enslaved by northern Sudanese had their conditions become worse. Slave owners couldn't get as much food, so the little bit that they were already feeding to their slaves got taken away. They also got harsher crackdown on not getting work done and more brutal circumstances like genital mutilation and starvation. Sometimes poking out slaves' eyes who choose to disobey sometimes basic and abusive orders. Friends, these things have been occurring and they continue to occur. But Christian Solidarity International, somebody that we have advocated for the last dozen years or so at Kevin McCullough, all things related to this broadcast, Radio Night Live, The Kevin McCullough Show, and all of our podcasts, one of the things we have been advocating for is the liberation of those slaves so that they're not even in the ownership of those slave masters any longer. See, they came to be slaves while the Sudanese Civil War was underway. And when government powers brokered the peace and South Sudan was created as the world's youngest nation, it didn't address, none of the global powers addressed the continuing slave scenario there. Friends, we can make a difference, as we have in years past, by choosing to liberate slave by slave on an individual underground railroad negotiated basis, not trading dollars for lives, but trading something that is of value to the slave master, a vaccine for his cattle called Novidium. It will help his cattle survive through the harsh summer and weather extremes, and in exchange, they'll release a slave. CSI has been involved in this negotiation for dozens of years and have helped freed tens of thousands. Over 100,000 slaves have now been freed. The vaccine cost about $50. And then in addition to that, CSI would like to offer every slave that is liberated what's called a bag of hope. It includes a tarp that can be turned into a tent. It includes a year's worth of sorghum seed to grow a coming crop. It includes a year's worth of sorghum grain to be able to feed themselves for the first year when they win their liberty. Friends, you can make a life for a slave know that freedom by just giving that gift of $250. They also get a she-goat to help produce some income for the family and gardening tools to help them on their way. It is a wonderful, wonderful way to help someone who has been ravaged by the COVID-19 crisis. Would you help free a slave right now? 888-342-1010 is the number. 888-342-1010. 888-342-1010. We need your help right now. 888-342-1010. That's 888-342-1010. You can also go to csi-usa.org and click on Kevin McCullough's picture. Welcome back. It's Radio Night Live. It's the Ladies Lounge, and I didn't mention this in the first segment of this hour, but I did mention it last hour. We've got a special musical guest to end, 5 of them actually, to end the broadcast with tonight. A little song that was put together completely during quarantine with half of them in other cities than the other. And it's going to be kind of fun. This might be the thing that if you're listening by way of radio, you want to tune over and get to the stream for coming up, because we're going to it'll just be a fun way to end the show tonight, I promise you. Special musical guest to end this hour of Radio Night Live straight ahead. Now, earlier this week, maybe you missed it, but Joe Biden wants us to teach more religion in schools. Did you catch what he said right here?
One of the things I think is important, I wish we taught more in our schools about the Islamic faith.
Oh, really? Yeah, that was Joe Biden yesterday doing one of his, I don't even know what you call these things. He stands there, he talks to a camera, no one asks him questions. I guess sometimes they do zoom in some people to ask things. But for some weird reason, he started his whole discussion yesterday with making that proclamation. I wish that we could, in our schools, teach more about the Islamic faith. Okay, I guess if that's the hill you're going to die on for your education policy reforms. Anyway, welcome to Kevin McCullough. We've got a big show for you. Kristin B. Tate is a columnist for The Hill. She's also a thrice best-selling author, and her most recent book deals with the whole issue of migration, of people living in the blue states, going to the red states, and then voting for the same policies they just escaped from in the blue states. And I highly recommend all of Kristin's books, but this one is particularly good. Kristin, welcome back. Joe Biden says that. He doesn't say let's teach more Judaism or let's teach more Christianity in the public schools. In fact, I'm pretty sure if Donald Trump said something like, well, you know, maybe we should have a few Bible stories in the reading time in elementary school, I'm pretty sure there'd be some sort of riots and people tearing things down because he said it. But Joe Biden, hey, let's teach the Islamic faith in public schools.
That's exactly right. And, you know, I wouldn't have a problem with a unit on Islamic studies or other religions if they weren't so against teaching any Christianity in public schools. I mean, the motivation is what's so frustrating here. This has nothing to do with a genuine interest in teaching children about different faiths around the world. This is about, you know, shoving a political view and ideology into these kids while their minds are malleable. It's about spoon feeding them leftism, teaching them to hate America and teaching them to hate everything that represents, you know, the nuclear Christian family. That's what this is about.
Well, I don't even think that he's all that serious about it. I think that it's just a pandering talking point to a Muslim political activist group that he's trying to get 1 million votes from.
You might be right about that, but don't underestimate the damage Joe Biden can do. This man has no idea what's going on. He's an empty shell. He is a Trojan horse for the most far-left radicals, and they will ram through all of this stuff. Do you really think Joe Biden is going to put his foot down and say no to anything the radical leftists demand?
Well,
I certainly don't.
We were just talking with Commissioner Kerik in the last segment, and of course, he's basically outsourced his whole domestic policy stuff to AOC and Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's gone full bore left.
Yep, and he will not stand up to anything any of these people demand. So if you vote for Joe Biden, you're not getting the good old moderate Joe. What you're getting is the AOCs, the Ilhan Omars. That is who you're voting for if you vote for Joe Biden. That is where the country will head, and very quickly. And now, you know, Kevin, they're talking about getting rid of the filibuster. If the Democrats take back the Senate and the presidency and they get rid of the filibuster, in a matter of months, they can completely remake the country. country. People have got to wake up and understand what's at stake here.
Yeah. No, in fact, they want to put an endless amount of judges on the Supreme Court. They want to fundamentally
DC a state. They want to stack the Senate by making DC a state. They want a one-party state. They want no Republican Party. They want permanent Democratic control for the foreseeable future, and they could get it. That's what's terrifying. We cannot get complacent. Everybody, I don't care if you don't like Trump or you think his tweets are bad. Everybody who doesn't want that future of a one-party radical left-wing state needs to show up and vote for Donald Trump. I have my issues with him, but you better believe I'll be voting for Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's
because
become,
if Joe Biden gets in, this country is going to look very different.
This is not about even your typical partisan divide. This is about anarchy and chaos versus America. And if you like the freedoms that we have had and enjoyed for 200 years, you're going to have to defend them at the ballot box this year. Kristin, there's another idea that he's put forward, and it has to do with taxpayer-funded daycare. What's the cost on that, and how does he expect that to be implemented?
So Biden wants to spend $775 billion on several care programs, one of which is for elder care. And we know how the government does with that, right? I mean, we had all these older people dying in old homes because of the government's handling of them. And he also wants to implement universal pre-K. So, imagine how the post office is run or any of these government facilities. That is what they will do with daycare. Do you really want to drop your kid off at a government-run daycare? It gives them a few more years to brainwash your kid, create armies of government workers. And, this is just totally backwards. He said this is how he wants to stimulate the economy. If you want to stimulate the economy, reopen the schools. Let's get back to Donald Trump's agenda. We were doing just fine before we willingly shut down our entire economy.
Well, we were, and the truth is, we're beginning to see the bounce back of an economy that, because he had those deregulation and tax reform policies already done, that we're going to be able to recover faster than we should have probably ever historically thought we could. Though it's not going to be an easy task to get there, we need to continue to fight for those ideals. But Kristin, when you think about judges, when you think about government intrusion, when you think about the protection of one's own personal security through the Second Amendment, when you think about all of the things that these people that Joe Biden is surrounding himself with, and friends, this was one of my arguments about Trump in 2016. I didn't support him through Indiana. I was a Ted Cruz guy. We get into the place where it's just him and Hillary, and I started to watch who he put around him. Donald Trump put a lot of really quality people around him, and I thought, you know what, this is going to be a team that's going to make a lot of impact. Joe Biden's doing the same thing with very suspicious characters, Kristin.
That's exactly right. The bottom line is Joe Biden is actually not an ideologue. He is a career politician who wants to be president, and he'll just go through the motions and say whatever he needs to say to get president. The real ideologues that will be driving an agenda during a Biden administration are far leftists who hate this country. They hate Western civilization. Joe Biden will get his title. He'll get to be president. That's all he wants. He doesn't have an agenda or a vision that he wants to implement. So that part of the job, the important part that shapes the country, will be left to these people who will destroy this country. And it could happen again in a matter of months. People have got to wake up. Got to wake up.
Got to vote. Got to get informed. And you got to cast that ballot come November. I'm Kevin McCullough. More Ladies Lounge. Kelsey Bolar from the Independent Women's Forum up next.
Brand new from beloved author Ivan Quinones comes a new children's book, Magnificent Ian and the Secret Lab. Available now in paperback or Kindle from the Amazon Marketplace. One satisfied parent said, "The story is quite intriguing. The way it develops leaves you waiting for the next adventure. Magnificent Ian is such a fun book. I would highly recommend it for children grades 2 through 5. Another said, "I barely got the book out of the package and my son immediately grabbed it and ran off to read it." In Magnificent Ian and the Secret Lab, Ian finds a secret lab in the middle of an active volcanic island, run by a crazy scientist who tasks him with widening a secret tunnel. There's suspense, action, adventure, and a lesson about integrity. Available now on the Amazon Marketplace and the Amazon Kindle store. Magnificent Ian and the Secret Lab from author Ivan Quinones in paperback and Kindle form. Get your copy today. Magnificent Ian and the Secret Lab.
Balance of Nature.
I haven't heard any negative feedback from any of my patients who've been taking the product. I look at Balance of Nature and I look what it's doing for me as I've started taking it, and for the patients that I have that are taking it, it's been phenomenal.
In my practice, I was getting to the point where I couldn't have the strength to see that many patients anymore. And I was introduced to the fruits and veggies. Just slowly, my strength started to come back. And it was because of the good nutrition. I can't say enough good for Balance of Nature and what it's done for me. I recommend it to everybody.
Don't wait to see what getting over 10 servings of whole fruits and vegetables can do for you. Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order of fruits and veggies. Start your journey to better health today by calling 1-800-2468-751 or by going to balanceofnature.com and use discount code KMC.
Hi, Kevin McCullough. Have I told you what a great night's sleep you can get by sleeping on a MyPillow? It's really true. It's changed my life for a number of years now. And ever since I've been sleeping on a MyPillow, I don't have interrupted sleep. I don't have to fold my pillows in half and stack them up on top of each other and do all kinds of weird stuff. Why? Because MyPillow will conform to the shape that I want it to. And it'll stay cool all night and keep that shape. And come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. Is your pillow warranted for 10 years? I didn't think so. Well, right now, if you call MyPillow and you use my promo code, you're going to get the best offer that's ever been granted on radio or television. $69.98. That's $34.99 per pillow. That's all it costs. $69.98, 2 premiums, $34.99 each. Never seen this offer before. He called the show just to tell us what it was. Here's the phone number, 800-506-2641. Promo code KMC. Again, 800-506-2641. Promo code KMC. Or online at mypillow.com.
Balance of Nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
I'm very, very athletic. I play ice hockey 2 or 3 days a week. I'm in good shape for my age. I keep up with the young kids, but, I get tired. Muscles get sore. I'm achy. So I noticed just by taking this product for a month, I'm not as tired as I used to be or fatigued. Muscles feel good. I feel like my stamina is better than it was. I just feel better than I did, and I wasn't really complaining before.
Don't wait to see what getting over 10 servings of whole fruits and vegetables every day can do for you. Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order of fruits and veggies. Start your journey to better health today by calling 1-800-2468-751 or by going to balanceofnature.com and make sure to receive this special radio offer by using discount code KMC.
And welcome back to Radio Night Live.
My family and I support Operation Legend, and we strongly want our community and everyone else behind us.
I thought yesterday when that young lady stepped forward, and she is barely a kid herself. I mean, this is a very young mom who lost, who we later found out had been a child who had been born under difficult circumstances and had open heart surgery at age 4 months. And then is shot and killed in his sleep on June 29th in Kansas City as part of a gang crossfire problem that the city of Kansas City was dealing with. I thought really cemented a moment for the president on the national stage to say, you know what? People are talking about how Black Lives Matter, but my administration's doing something about it. And I'm curious to see what my next guest thinks about this, given the state of race relationships and the launching of Operation Legend yesterday. by the Department of Justice and the White House. Kelsey Bolar is the editor of the Thursday edition of the Bright newsletter. She's also a contributor and a strategic analyst for the Independent Women's Forum, and she also is a contributor to the Daily Signal, the Heritage Foundation, the Federalist, and Kevin McCullough Radio, as well as Fox News and Fox Business all the time. Kelsey, thanks for being here. When you saw, or when you read, or when you realized the impact of yesterday, do you think my impressions are far off, or did you have a similar feeling?
Well, I think this step is unfortunately necessary. Kansas City, where the 4-year-old legend was shot in crossfire, had a 40% increase in homicides recently. We know these statistics are not an anomaly. They're happening all across the country. And we also know that even before President Trump took office, he was a tough on crime figure. He had no tolerance for any politicians who are not keeping their city safe. And so I am not surprised that he is making this a priority in his administration. I, again, think it is necessary. We saw just this week in Chicago, there were 15 people shot at a funeral.
Yeah.
So gang violence and shootings are just out of control in this country. And there should be no question that if local police officers are not able to handle the surge in crime, then they will need federal assistance. And the thing with Operation Legend is that it's an anti-crime task force which will use street agents and investigators who are going to work shoulder to shoulder with the local police officers to solve a lot of these murders that police and local investigators unfortunately rarely have any leads on, because within gangs often nobody will speech, so no one will give any information, even when often they know who did it.
Well, what's interesting about Kansas City, and the president and AG Barr highlighted this yesterday, this expansion of through Operation Legend, named for this 4-year-old who was killed, these gang and anti-crime task force have been established for like over 30 years. And it's not like the mayor of Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot, has described it of Trump sending troops into her city. These are professional law enforcement officers, mostly FBI, DHS, those types. They're going to come in and that are going to pursue exclusively people who perpetrate federal crimes. So felony murders, things that rise to the level of that federal offense. And when they did it in Kansas City, within 2 weeks, they had arrested 200 people that had been on the run. Kelsey, if you can do that, if he can send 35 more people into Amarillo and maybe 100 more people into Chicago and a couple of other places and have those same kind of results, this is going to be a huge domestic policy win for the administration, proving that he's looking out for the voters, even in the urban centers.
Right, and you're going to see liberal mayors come out in opposition of this, sort of like the backlash you're hearing about federal agents helping to respond to the very violent riots that have been continuing in Portland for over 55 days now.
Right.
You're going to hear criticism about these efforts, but what I want to hear from are the families on the ground.
That's it.
The families that have no tolerance for this. They are worried about losing their innocent children to senseless gun violence. It has to stop. And you're right, President Trump has really an obligation to step in when this many American lives are being lost.
Well, it is. I know that the mayor of Chicago finds herself in a tough situation because she came out all hardcore against this because she was thinking it was going to be like the Portland operation. And everybody at the announcement yesterday made it clear this is not federal troops, quote unquote, protecting federal properties. These are professional investigators that are going to be tracking down these murderers. And all I can think of is that young mom who was standing behind that podium yesterday and just in a gentle way thanking President Trump for caring about her kid. Kelsey Bolar, always thankful for your input. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kevin.
Coming up, Bethany, Mandel, and our special musical guest to end the night. Straight ahead, Radio Night Live. Hi, it's Kevin McCullough, and we are reaching a very important point in the COVID-19 crisis that most people in America don't know anything about. See, the COVID crisis in America has played out along one set of talking points. We must find a cure. We've got to have a vaccine. We need new therapies. We've got to make sure that reopenings begin, which is good. That's what America needs. That's how we will get our life back on track. And it's important for that to happen because of how the COVID crisis has actually interrupted the life of the third world. Well, wait a second, Kevin. What do you mean by that? Well, it's this simple. When the first world, Europe and America and the developed countries on planet Earth, began to experience the COVID crisis, the poverty that was already engulfing third world countries took a deeper and darker hold on all of them. That is nowhere more pronounced than in the Sudan region of Africa. In the northern Sudanese country, those who have been enslaved by northern Sudanese had their conditions become worse. Slave owners couldn't get as much food, so the little bit that they were already feeding to their slaves got taken away. They also got harsher crackdown on not getting work done and more brutal circumstances like genital mutilation and starvation. Sometimes poking out slaves' eyes who choose to disobey sometimes basic and abusive orders. Friends, these things have been occurring and they continue to occur. But Christian Solidarity International, somebody that we have advocated for the last dozen years or so at Kevin McCullough, all things related to this broadcast, Radio Night Live, The Kevin McCullough Show, and all of our podcasts, one of the things we have been advocating for is the liberation of those slaves so that they're not even in the ownership of those slave masters any longer. See, they came to be slaves while the Sudanese Civil War was underway. And when government powers brokered the peace and South Sudan was created as the world's youngest nation, it didn't address, none of the global powers addressed the continuing slave scenario there. Friends, we can make a difference, as we have in years past, by choosing to liberate slave by slave on an individual underground railroad negotiated basis, not trading dollars for lives, but trading something that is of value to the slave master, a vaccine for his cattle called Novidium. It will help his cattle survive through the harsh summer and weather extremes, and in exchange, they'll release a slave. CSI has been involved in this negotiation for dozens of years and have helped freed tens of thousands. Over 100,000 slaves have now been freed. The vaccine cost about $50. And then in addition to that, CSI would like to offer every slave that is liberated what's called a bag of hope. It includes a tarp that can be turned into a tent. It includes a year's worth of sorghum seed to grow a coming crop. It includes a year's worth of sorghum grain to be able to feed themselves for the first year when they win their liberty. Friends, you can make a life for a slave know that freedom by just giving that gift of $250. They also get a she-goat to help produce some income for the family and gardening tools to help them on their way. It is a wonderful, wonderful way to help someone who has been ravaged by the COVID-19 crisis. Would you help free a slave right now? 888-342-1010 is the number. 888-342-1010. 888-342-1010. We need your help right now. 888-342-1010. That's 888-342-1010. You can also go to csi-usa.org and click on Kevin McCullough's picture. All right, Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us. A lot of you have been writing me in recent days. Even those of you that don't live in my household have been writing me in recent days, complaining to me about what you perceive to be maybe one of your biggest fears in the next 60 days, and that is what's going to happen with school. Are you going to send kids back after Labor Day? Are you going to be able to have any normality come back into your child's life after the rather abysmal failure of the remote learning process that the spring had for many? I think that this is an item of big concern. We've had Carol Markowicz on numbers of times on her normal appearances on Tuesday to talk about the New York City schools specifically. But it is not just a city-related fear. This is happening everywhere across the country, and maybe you're noticing it as well. Someone else who does, she happens to be a homeschool mom, but she's sensing the angst that all moms are feeling is Bethany Mandel. And she writes for a number of outlets, but most recently in the Washington Examiner, and you can follow her on Twitter as well. Bethany, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. I know you're busy raising those youngsters, so thank you for taking the time out to be here. You wrote about this this week in your column for the Examiner. What are you observing in terms of the level of anxiety that back to school is creating for moms in particular?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing in all of these Facebook groups that parents are not able to send their kids back, and they're basically being told we're going to continue the Zoom indefinitely and suck it up, and this is going to be normal perhaps until there's a vaccine. So parents are trying to decide what to do, if they're going to continue with the Zoom, which we all know didn't work, or if they're going to have to quit their jobs and take over the task that is gargantuan. I know this because I homeschool,
right,
of schooling their kids, and the entire weight of it is being thrust on mothers. Every Facebook group where parents are discussing this, 99% of the conversations are between mothers.
Right.
And it's the choice to keep schools closed is anti-child and anti-woman.
Well, and so people say, well, that's what the president says. So, Kev, we would expect you to be. And friends, trust me, this is not the case. We have 3 in our household from 3 different schools that had 3 different sets of Google Meets and Zoom passwords and all the stuff that Bethany, Karol, and I joked often off air about it. But like the hardest part of remote learning was just getting into the curriculum every day, just to finding out what the lesson plan was for the next day. But it was also the fact that it was not something that we were originating, that it was being kind of dictated to us by people, and we weren't really like hip to what their agenda was in terms of how that laid out every day. And, after you do it for 12 weeks, you kind of get better at it, but it's still not what the kids had been thriving under. And here in New York, it's just come to my attention that there's a law firm, particularly for special education kids, that are not getting the additional help that they need. Where do those moms go when you need, extra help from different therapists that your case manager may say?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who has ever had a kid in speech therapy or occupational therapy or any kind of therapy knows you cannot do it on Zoom. And the strides that kids have been making are being completely erased, and there's no end in sight to not having in-person therapy. This window of development is narrow, and it is closing for millions of kids, and there's no getting this time back.
Yeah.
I don't understand from people who are supposedly in favor of the little guy and low income and people who are downtrodden. This is going to be catastrophic for millions of American families who do not have the time and the resources to form homeschooling pods for their kids so that they can continue learning. This is going to be catastrophic for the mom who works the pharmacy counter at CVS, because she doesn't have the luxury of quitting her job because
Right.
she's a single mom. And so she's going to be faced with a choice. She can't afford childcare. She can't afford a pod. She can't afford a tutor. Do I leave my kid home alone, or do I quit my job and not have a home to leave them home alone in? And no one seems to care.
Well, I think that is the biggest problem, is that you feel like Trenton, Albany, and D.C. to some degree are just saying, well, too bad. And I think that the president has, had a tough uphill fight in saying that schools should be open. But I think that's the heartbeat of the average mom across the country.
Yes. Yes.
Let me ask you about this, though. And this is, and you touched on a little bit in the article about some ideas. Obviously, no one's saying, well, we're going to rebate your taxes that you would normally pay on your property or other things to fund these schools. But if the schools sit empty for a year, they don't really need that money. And I know teachers' unions play a role in this downfall, and there are other things at work here. But is there any thought being given to creative supplemental ideas to help these parents?
Yeah, no, you can't. It was funny that I was talking to a reporter earlier today, and she said, people that are forming pods are thinking about raising money for underprivileged children so that they can have educational opportunities. What do you think about this, like, kind of private effort to provide resources to kids? I'm like, why? We already have allocated money for those kids to be educated, and it's being flushed down the drain. If they're not going to educate children with our tax dollars, then give those tax dollars to the parents directly.
I think one of the things that was very difficult for teachers and for public officials to admit in the spring was that even though the workloads had changed significantly, the paychecks kept coming. And
Yes.
and the ones that really lost were the children, and by extension, the mothers of those children.
Yep. And there will be no urgency to fix this problem. I mean, you think about your grocery store. If your local Trader Joe's was still making the same revenue, they wouldn't have put up glass shields. They wouldn't have made all of their employees and all of their customers wear masks. They wouldn't have implemented social distancing in their schools, in their stores, because why would they? They were still making the same amount of money. When you made it, if you pegged their seriousness about making people feel comfortable and making the store operational on money, they made it happen. And schools are not being given any incentive to make it happen. And it's because they're still getting paid.
Yeah.
Why would they?
Well, and that's why the unions are fighting against it. And friends, that's where we sometimes have to step up and say, no, we've got to do it differently. We've got to think more honestly about it. And Bethany Mandel did that in her piece. Parents propose a new way to educate their children in the fall school pods. It's in the Washington Examiner. And up next, our special musical guest. Stay with us, Radio Night Live. Kevin McCullough, have I told you what a great night's sleep you can get by sleeping on a MyPillow? It's really true. It's changed my life for a number of years now. And ever since I've been sleeping on a MyPillow, I don't have interrupted sleep. I don't have to fold my pillows in half and stack them up on top of each other and do all kinds of weird stuff. Why? Because MyPillow will conform to the shape that I want it to. And it'll stay cool all night and keep that shape. And come with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. Is your pillow warranted for 10 years? I didn't think so. Well, right now, if you call MyPillow and you use my promo code, you're going to get the best offer that's ever been granted on radio or television. $69.98. That's $34.99 per pillow. That's all it costs. $69.98. 2 premiums, $34.99 each. Never seen this offer before. He called the show just to Hi, Kevin McCullough. Shopping for an engagement ring can be very stressful. You want a unique ring at a great price. The big jewelry stores try to sell you what they have in stock. Others try to upsell you till it's way over. That's why I urge every one of you, my friends, my listeners, even my family, to visit Lord's Diamonds and see my very good friend Anu. You see, Anu is different. She takes great pride in working with her client's budget, finding the right diamond, and creating a unique engagement ring that the bride cherishes forever. There is no comparison. Honesty, integrity, good Christian values. This is what Anu and Lord's Diamonds are all about. It's the height of wedding and engagement season. Don't settle. Buy a ring everyone will admire, and if you mention Kevin McCullough, you're going to get an additional $500 off the price of wedding bands. To set up an appointment, call 212-789-8500. That's 212-789-8500, or online at Lord's Diamonds. Hi, Kevin McCullough. I've been telling you about it for the longest time. The market goes up, the market goes down, the economy kind of wiggles around. Yes, we're doing better. Yes, it's pretty good days that we're in. But did you know that if something took a turn for the worse, that right now it is legal in this country, right this very second, for the government to reach into your 401k, IRA, and bank accounts, saving accounts, checking accounts, etc., and take money out and leave it instead an IOU? That's called the bail-in. Get the facts by reading about the coming bail-in when you call and get a free copy of the Landmark Capital's exclusive white paper on the coming bail-in. See how all this was set up to manage the out-of-control national debt? Learn how to protect your future and your hard-earned money by investing those funds into precious metals. So when the bail-in happens, they can't touch your precious metals, and you have peace of mind. Call Landmark today, 844-604-2575. Welcome back to Radio Night Live. It's Kevin McCullough. 20 years ago, there was a music group that came out of Chicago that penned a song that a music insider said it sounded like the type of hymn that might be written if Blue Oyster Cult had written the hymn Just As I Am. Now, if that doesn't intrigue you enough, I hope this will. During quarantine, I got bored. And so I called up some of my old musician friends, and we actually did re-record a song that we originally recorded 20 years ago, and I thought I'd share it with you. This is us in Chicago and New York, recording separately from our different locales, and then, as they like to say in the studio, put it all together in post. It's a little song that we wrote 20 years ago called All of Me on Radio Night Live. The song is called All of Me. Doug Bardolph on lead guitar, Kyle Olson on drums, Matt Voss on rhythm, Steve Van Hout on bass, and yours truly, Kevin McCullough on keys and vocals. Anyway, I hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you next week on Radio Night Live.